Hi everybody, and welcome again to the Newburyport Documentary Film Festival's Watch Club. This is the November 2024 edition. Happy Thanksgiving prematurely to those of you watching, and we want to bring back a friend of the festivals tonight for this month's Watch Club. Arthur Musah is the filmmaker behind Brief Tender Light, which we world premiered Arthur's film at last year's festival, and it was a real honor to do so. It's a beautiful film about four students at MIT who each came to the university from different countries in Africa, and Arthur has since gone on to do some really nice things with this film since premiering with us last year, and we're excited to talk to him about it and to congratulate him. Before we get to talking to Arthur, I will just ask producer Steve to show us the trailer for those of you who maybe haven't seen the film, or maybe if you did see it with us last year, you want to get another chance to refresh your memory. So Steve, let's take a look at the trailer for Brief Tender Light.
I just got admitted into the best engineering institution in the whole world.
When I got the letter, I would never forget it.
Those three letters, MIT, they mean a lot to people. People expect things from you.
I think MIT will take me to the next big thing.
20 years ago, I too had been chosen from Ghana in West Africa to study the famous MIT.
What are you going to gain from MIT? What are you planning on bringing back?
I want mass skills, mass knowledge.
Yes.
Yeah!
Yes!
I see no reason why I shouldn't, live up to the expectation of my people back home.
When they look at me, what do they think I look like? And then they said I look African American. I want to represent my country. I can't keep on wearing Tanzania shirts all the time.
You're discovering who you are if you don't know yourself already. Why are you working on the film?
MIT taught me things about the world and about myself that led me far from home.
I don't really know how it happens, but you just notice certain changes about yourself.
My first snow experience. Snow!
I have really high expectations of my experience here.
If I'm not good in physics, then how am I going to be an engineer? Maybe this is not the right place for me.
One thing I've been struggling with, am I ever going to feel at home in the US?
Time is a tool. It gently molds you to a place.
If I see people speaking up, I will go and speak up.
Justice! Now!
You have a responsibility to help your country.
The fear of what awaits me in the world. I don't know what's ahead of me.
This drive of wanting to help or wanting to impact other people's lives is something that's been there for me since I was very young.
We have to pave our own way, and I am scared of my dreams because they're bigger than me and they're vast.
Arthur Musah, welcome to the Watch Club.
Thank you, James. It's a great pleasure to be back. I feel like I'm back with family.
Yeah, same. Well, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. So you've had an exciting year since you premiered the film with us. In January, I think it was, right? The PBS series POV, Point of View, premiered the film. So that's fantastic. You were able to get it out to the PBS audience nationally. And the film is still streaming through the end of this month. This is one of the reasons why we wanted to have you on the Watch Club this month, is that the film is still available to stream through the PBS or POV websites through the end of this month. So for those in our audience, if you either are still interested in seeing the film and have not yet done so, or if you have seen it through us or on PBS and want to tell your friends and family, it goes away after next weekend. Is that right?
So as a slight kind of clarification on that. So it's actually available to PBS Passport members for, I think, a couple more years. But it's free to stream for anybody in the US through the end of November. They made it free this month because it's International Education Month or Global Education Month.
Got
So in celebration of that, since the story ties into that theme nicely,
Of
they
course.
made it available for free.
Yeah, well, we know that when all the PBS documentary series, they do, once they air, they do make them available for a limited period of time. I didn't realize it was about that specific. What's it called? The monthly. It's the international.
So specifically last week was International Education Week. So a lot of colleges all around the world, but in the U.S. specifically, have events to celebrate, international education.
International students, sure.
And so the entire month, there are various events around the world celebrating this topic.
Got it. And then are you going to be so is the film going to be available to stream on other platforms? Are you looking at distribution, or how does that work when you already engage with PBS? Like, can you then, once they're not showing it anymore, they're only showing it through their subscription platform, can you take it out to Prime or, whatever, Netflix or any of that? Or where does that stand now for your film?
Yeah. Yes, you can. So PBS had an exclusive, PBS POV had an exclusive window. And after that expires, they still have it, and it's available on their platform for about 3 years. PBS Passport members, except for these special periods where they make it available to everybody. But beyond that, we are looking for partners to kind of get the film to more people. So actually, thanks to our international sales agents, we've actually gotten the film in Ontario, Canada, where it's streaming currently on TVO, their local public broadcaster, and then in Switzerland also on the French station RTS, Radio Télévision Suisse, I think. So there are a couple of places that in the world where you can currently access the film for free.
Yeah. And I'm going to mention something that briefly, the other exciting news more recently that you have is that the film has been submitted for consideration in the best documentary category at the Oscars or with the Academy, right? So these were a couple of these posters that Steve just put up on screen are posters for special screenings that you had in New York and LA during the period of consideration for the Academy Awards, right?
That's right. So we're one of 169 films that qualified for consideration. And so one of the things you do is just kind of, host screenings, have conversations about the film and about its topics with different partners. So we're currently in the middle of doing that.
Right. So let's, for those who maybe didn't get to see you speak at our festival last year, let's talk a little bit about obviously again, about the subjects of the film and your interest in their story. So as you said in the trailer, you went to MIT as a student as an international student about 20 years ago now, right? And
yes, that was, I arrived on August 19, 2000. So
wow,
24 years, yeah.
And then these students are sort of like a next generation version of you, these 4 students that you ended up focusing on.
The new and improved.
But tell us, about and I'm kind of continually fascinated by the question that one of the students asks you, like, why exactly are you making this film? And you're kind of pause for a second, like, oh, right. I'm like, this is giving me a chance to rethink my own experience as well as consider their experiences, right? Like sort of looking through their eyes at your own experience at MIT as an international student. So tell us again the story that you've probably told a lot of times, which is about your idea for making the film and how you found these 4 students.
Yeah, so I guess I was curious about this film and all the questions that allowed me to wrestle with, because I guess for a couple of reasons. I come from a line of or a family that has been in this international education journey for a long time. So my dad, who's from Ghana, went to study in the Soviet Union, in a part that's Ukraine. And so he and my mom met as students. And then when they graduated, we moved to Ghana, and so, but that was pretty common back then, right? So my dad's cohort of African international students mostly went back to their home countries. A generation later, my friends and I, took that journey. In fact, I remember I actually came on a Ghana Airways flight, from Accra to JFK to New York, and then we there was a connecting flight to Boston.
Yep.
But that flight was such an interesting flight because it was about a third to a half full of other students from Ghana, many of whom I knew and were my friends, either from my high school or other high schools all over the country. But we had gotten to know each other because we had worked on that application process, applying to colleges in the US. So, I kind of remember this experience of like flying with friends who were going to colleges all over the US, and feeling like we all, to some extent, felt like we had to make that journey count for home, right? And our ideas were, we're going to come get the education and kind of return and kind of make a life back in our home country or countries. And, many years later, I found myself still in the US, and I had all these questions about who I'd become in the process of like living across continents. I had this guilt of, had I really given back to the community that helped shape who I was, after having this chance at this really cool elite education at a place like MIT. So there were questions I was wrestling with, and it made sense to kind of go back to where it all happened or where it all started for me, and kind of follow people going through that experience in real time and be able to ask questions and maybe like observe a little bit more critically that story of international education or going abroad to study. But then in the process, you're changing. Your journey abroad has an impact to your home community, to your family, to your home country, your continent, but also the US where you're studying, right? And it felt like a unique immigrant journey that I hadn't seen explored in cinema. And so, of course, I'm always looking for things that resonate on a personal level, but also things that are new and haven't been done in cinema before. And so it made sense to kind of embark on this film.
And that's one of the fascinating things about it, is that I think at the beginning of the film, all four students are basically saying, "I'm going to get this elite education so I can bring it back and help my home country." But they don't all necessarily think that that's what they're going to do by the end of the film and by the end of their education, right? I mean, if I remember correctly, at least one or two of them stayed in the States, at least in the immediate aftermath of graduation, right? So, where are they now? Tell us about the four students now, like who's where and what are they doing?
Yeah. So, excuse me. The kind of arc that we trace in the film that you just described, where you start, where people end, is pretty common, I would say, especially for African international students. And the thing about Return that I've been reflecting on is that Return actually most of the time takes much longer than 4 years of college. And then sometimes most of the time, Return also looks not exactly like a complete return, but more of like a circulation, so home becomes the home that you left, but as well as like the new home that you've adopted and you're now more used to. And that ends up being true for the four participants years after the film leaves them. So by the end of the film, 3 of them are still in the US, and then Billy from Rwanda is the one who's kind of gone into a PhD, and he's doing research for Rwanda. And by the end of the film, he's actually doing a fellowship for the World Bank in Rwanda. He is now working for the Ministry of Infrastructure, I believe, in Rwanda as a consultant. So he's using, all his skills and working on the ground. And the other person who's also sort of figured out a way to have one foot in Nigeria, one foot in the US is in a very constructive way is Philip. So Philip, Philip is the protagonist in the film who everyone's like, how's Philip doing as soon as the film ends? Because the film leaves him in a little bit more of like a challenging part. There are all these questions about, can America be home?
Right.
And so he's had a chance on the festival circuit and at various events that we've had to share that, he's in a really exciting place in his life. He's actually he co-founded and is the CTO of a startup, a fintech startup called Clever Banking. It was just funded and supported by Y Combinator, which is a startup accelerator in Silicon
Valley. Sure, yeah.
So he partnered with another international student from Nigeria, a young woman, Tolu Alabi, and together they formed this company that launched in Nigeria and is doing really well. And I believe they employ people in the US and in Nigeria. So he's kind of creating this like global company and giving back to his old home as well as his new home.
Right.
And he's also started his own family as well. Fidelis is also kind of in multiple places. I don't have too many details that I can share publicly about his life, just because I share what people have shared in various public conversations. We got a lot out of them in the filming, so I let them decide how much they want to keep sharing of their current lives. But yeah, his life is also back and forth between Zimbabwe and the US as well. And that's similar for Santi as well. Last time I was in touch with her, she was visiting her family in Tanzania. They were very excited about the film and its many awards and all that it was doing. And they were wondering when it was going to come to Tanzania, which we haven't had a chance to screen there yet.
You haven't showed it in any of the 4 African countries yet?
We have in Rwanda. We just had our African premiere in Rwanda at the Mashariki Film Festival, which is in Kigali. We actually had another screening in Rwanda in partnership with an organization that works with high achieving, low income students. So they have a conference in Indaba every year, and they have educators that work with all these students, come together and kind of share best practices and learnings. And they were really excited to screen the film. And actually, Philip was able to zoom in and have like a really long conversation with them as well, which they loved. Apparently, it was the highlight of their conference. So that was exciting.
So you're obviously still in touch with not just those students, but others from, Ghana, your homeland, and others. I'm curious whether you have a sense yet. I mean, it's early times, I guess, but given our most recent election here in America, are the international students concerned? Is the next generation of international students concerned about their prospects for coming to America to study?
Honestly, I have not had individual, like specific conversations about this topic.
Again, the election was just a couple of weeks ago, but still.
Yes, and I've been buried with some, organizing the screenings and things like that.
Right.
But I'd imagine so. I think there's a lot of anxiety in like various immigrant communities and even visitor communities. What's going to happen with visas, what's going to happen with green cards and all of that. That was the case before with various bans for different kinds of people, Muslim bans and all of that. And there's just like, the incoming administration has promised more of such action. So I think there's a lot of concern and about how, movement of people will be affected.
Right. I should take a second to say we ran the crawl a minute ago, but I didn't have a chance to mention. If anybody who's watching live right now wants to ask Arthur a question, all you need to do is type it in the chat, and we will rephrase it for him. So please go ahead and do that if you're interested. Arthur, forgive me, I forget the answer to this question, but is your mom actually Ukrainian?
She is. She's Russian Ukrainian. Yes.
Right. And so we talked about this just before we went on air tonight. You were there as a baby, I think, and spent another year there as a child, right? So you have obviously roots there. You were born there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And you have extended family on your mom's side who had to leave either because of economic conditions prior to the war, or now obviously that had to leave because of the dangers of the war, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, so essentially I currently don't have immediate family or close family in Ukraine for all the reasons that you mentioned. But they are elsewhere in Europe. And yeah, and it's tough, because on one level there's a little bit of more mobility, I would say. On the other hand, as well, you don't have access to your home, your your belongings, your things, your roots, so to speak. So it's been an adjustment.
Yeah, I'm sure, to say the least, right? And then let's talk for a minute about your other homeland, Ghana, because I know you're have been active in LGBT rights in Ghana. And I think you talked to us about this last year, and you were just talking to me about it a few minutes ago, but there's like a pretty strict anti-LGBT law being proposed, right, in Ghana. And you just told me a few minutes ago, that it is being tied up in the courts right now. Is that right?
Yes. So it's actually been unfortunate. I'm really disappointed with the leadership in Ghana at all levels. There have been very few legislatures that have been willing to stand up for and do the right thing in terms of defending queer Ghanaians against a bill that is rapidly making its way into law, and even before its passage into law has already precipitated great violence on the queer community and allies in Ghana. So it was proposed in 2021, introduced into parliament by 8 MPs. There were a lot of debates around it, public hearings. There were rights organizations that made very clear arguments and provided clear data about the harm that this bill or eventual law would poses to Ghanaians, and also just to Ghana's economy, and so on and so forth. And in spite of all of that, there was a vote that happened, and sadly, around Ghana's Independence Day, the legislature in Ghana passed the law pretty much unanimously. So everybody who was in parliament voted for passage of the law. It would literally criminalize queer people's existence as well as allyship. So if you're an ally or an NGO that provides services to queer people, you could be thrown in jail for multiple years. And that's just like the tip of the iceberg. There's so many
pretty drastic
things. It's an attack on free speech as well, because journalists who report on any queer topics could be thrown in jail as well. Companies like, social media platforms that host news and things like that could also be liable under this law. It's actually very wide-reaching. So anyway, the legislature passed it. The president has not signed it yet. There were some delays with that, and so it got taken up by the Supreme Court. And so the Supreme Court has been dealing with those cases, and there's a decision coming up in December on that, which might actually force the president, or might send might send the bill for signing to the president. In the meantime, Ghana is about to have a presidential election on December 5th, I believe. And so, unfortunately, both of the presidential candidates with the most likelihood of winning
Support the bill.
And they're trying to outdo each other in terms of and the funny thing is, like, one of them, I mean, it's a lot of political posturing, because I've had conversations with people close to one of these candidates who's on board with queer rights and understands the human rights implications of it, and yet
but thinks the anti-LGBT thing is a winning issue in Ghana.
Unfortunately, the leaders are choosing not to lead and are choosing to do the easy thing of fanning the flames of homophobia.
Right. Wow, that's brutal. Do you? Again, I forget the answer to this or not. Are your parents living in Ghana now or no?
Yes, my family is in Ghana. Yeah.
And are they sort of like, we'll stay in America, like don't come back here because it's not good right now for for the community?
Yeah, I mean, so I was actually just in Ghana for a month. We had some family health issues. So I went to kind of be there and help out. And so I was able to kind of go visit. I was obviously on higher alert. I mean, I always kind of go into this kind of hyper alert, closeted space that is very uncomfortable when I get on a flight to go back home. Home on one level. I mean, home should be a place of being safe, of feeling safe and accepted.
But you can't be yourself. You
have
be
your full self, So it was kind of difficult, just kind of constantly being on that hyper alert. And you can say anything or act in a way that's gonna alarm somebody or trigger somebody's homophobia. So it's definitely something that unfortunately, queer people have to navigate on a daily basis on the ground in Ghana. And yet we thrive and we survive and we thrive in there in spite of all that.
Okay, last question for you, I think. We know that this film took you quite a while to make, like several years to make, like a good chunk of your adult post-graduation life to make. Are you thinking about the next thing yet? Or you are. Okay. I don't know if you were thinking about it last year or not, but so what do you care to tell us? How much do you care to tell us about what the next thing might be for you?
Well, so I guess one of maybe the unexpected advantage or benefits of having such a long production, of working on one thing for so long, is I guess I had the luxury of like keeping a list or a document where whenever I'd get an idea as I was living life, I was filming, I was traveling to all these incredible countries and to people's homes. So I have a long list of ideas, several of which are very exciting to kind of take on right now. But in the last year, I've written a feature script that I'm really excited about.
Feature, not a doc.
Yes, it's a fiction feature.
Right.
I've also written a pilot for a TV series idea. Wow. Both are set on two continents. So I guess maybe that's the connection to Brief Tender Light.
That's what you know. You write what you know, right?
Exactly. It's coming from a very personal place, from a space that I know about things that I haven't seen tackled in cinema. So in cinema and television. So I'm excited to kind of push those and see where we can get.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, we wish you the best of luck, and we'll keep an eye out for you for sure. Welcome back. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us. It was a real joy to premiere your film last year, and it's been real fun to see how many nice things have happened for you this year. So we wish you best of luck in the Oscar considerations, and look forward to seeing this this feature work if and when that comes to pass. And we just wish you all the best. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us, Arthur.
Thank you so much, James. It's great to reconnect and catch up a little bit. Appreciate it.
We will take a quick moment to thank the sponsor of the Watch Club, which is the Ford Hall Forum at Suffolk University, which is the oldest continually operating public lecture series in America. We're thrilled to be partnered with them, and we want to say thank you to them as always, and we will see you next month in the Watch Club.